What is going on, everyone? This is Dr. Josh Funk, and you are listening to the Strength and Knowledge Podcast.
What's up, everybody? This is Zach Baker of Rehab to Perform and R2P Academy. And today on the Strength and Knowledge Podcast, we have another person from the healthcare, wellness, and fitness space, but not a PT. We actually have our first chiropractor on the show with us today. So we've got Dr. Kyle Richmond with us today. Kyle, I'll let you kind of do the introduction of who you are, where you're from, and kind of what you're currently up to in your career.
I love it. I did not know I was the first chiropractor, so that is very exciting.
Yeah, okay, I don't know. You can take that as either a very high or low bar that you're about to set. So wear it proudly.
We'll see. We'll see how this goes. But no, my name is Dr. Kyle Richmond. I've been in practice I'm at the tail end of 2 years now. About 2.5, 3 months ago, I decided to go out my own, open my own clinic titled Rebuilt Strength and Rehab. And as you notice, there is no chiropractic in it. I think that is the big thing that I'm trying to differentiate from. I do love chiropractic care. I am a chiropractor, but I don't lead with that a lot of times. I know there's a big, stigma about chiropractors that a lot of people don't like, and rightfully so. And that's kind of, we can go into my whole journey in school where I almost pulled the plug 2 months in or 3 months into chiropractic school and said, hey, I'm going to PT school. I didn't realize what chiropractic really was until I was in school. But we can get into that. Anyways, tail end of 2 years, just started a clinic. So I'm a new business owner, figuring all that out while treating patients, which is a very exciting but very nerve-wracking journey at the same time.
No, and that's awesome. And the reason that we bring individuals like you on here is really to give people an appreciation. I hope by the end of this conversation, whether we have people who are in PT school, chiro school, entertaining, med school, PA, whatever route, a lot of what we do overlaps. And in the end, most of what we're communicating to patients is speaking the same language across the board. And it's funny, one of my best friends growing up went to chiropractic school, and he went through chiropractic school as I was going through PT school. And our curriculums were almost identical until we got into some of the settings that only PTs operate in, when you get into inpatient and hospital-based PT. And obviously when they got into the more of the manipulation heavy part of their curriculum. But the first year and a half of each one of our programs was almost identical in regards to the basic sciences and the pathologies and injuries we treated and just the underlying systems involved. And that was kind of eye-opening to me. And then when he started talking about their labs and practicals, I'm like, man, we have extremely similar kind of backgrounds and school settings. And then I look at how he practices and how I practice, and other than the initials behind our name, there's a lot of similarities that go into that. And it's funny, you had mentioned almost at times not leading or putting the chiro into your title or your brand or your company. And it's for better or worse, I will say the one thing that chiropractors have done a tremendously better job of than the PT profession is just branding. And when you think of a chiropractor, people automatically know what chiropractors work with and what they do. When you tell somebody, hey, I'm a physical therapist, you'll get 20 different answers as to what that looks like. So for the one thing I think your profession does a tremendous job of is just, branding what populations associate with that. And obviously I know you guys work with above and beyond what the traditional kind of branding is of that. But that is one thing as a PT, I'm jealous of the chiropractic field, where I feel like you guys are light years ahead of us in regards to controlling that narrative.
Yeah, we have a lot more leeway, and I think that was something that kind of drew me to that. I hate to say, but you graduate chiropractic school, and they basically say, go do whatever you really want. You have the knowledge and the title. They don't really, I hate to say, they don't really care what you practice as. You can do no manipulation, you can do all manipulation, you can do this, that. There is really no hard set guideline, which was kind of intriguing. But then again, I don't even telling my parents' friends, they go, oh, you're a chiropractor. Yeah, I'm not going to see you. I've been to one, had a terrible experience. I'm like, well, that's why I don't lead with that, because I tell people more I'm a pain and movement specialist type of person versus, hey, you're going to come in and get adjusted. Half the time, I don't even adjust patients on the first few visits because I don't think it's necessary. So that's a whole nother thing we can go down. But
No, that's awesome. We'll cross that bridge a little bit later, but you're 2 years out and you've started your own business. What led you to wanting to pursue that? And admittedly, a lot of the chiropractors that I know, most of them are much more inclined into pursuing starting their own business than physical therapists I know. And I don't know if that's something that's taught in school. I don't know if it's just the nature of how the chiropractic field functions. That's the more natural path to go. But personally, what was it for you that led you down that route?
So out of school, I moved back home. So I'm from the southwest suburb of Chicago. I moved back home to work for someone who I knew throughout high school. He opened a clinic. He was a couple years ahead of me. Worked for him for about a year and a half or so, and just kind of started realizing that, the pay compensation wasn't there. I didn't really have much of a say. I was pretty restricted on how I treated, what I treated type of deal. I was working under somebody else's name. And at the point where in the chiropractic space, the branding is huge to be able to have something to put out there that this is me, because you're coming for me. You're not coming because your doctor referred you to the chiropractor. You're seeking me out personally. So I was under someone else's roof for a while and kind of had an opportunity come across my plate for a space. I always wanted to open my own clinic. Didn't know when that would be. I honestly didn't think it'd be so soon. I was thinking 3, 4, 5 years, get a ton of experience under my belt, learn, because in chiropractic school, they don't really even teach you much business. Everything I learned was from buddies of mine who have done this just recently or currently have their own clinic. But I got the opportunity. I said, you know what, now is the time to do it. It's an area where I'm from. I know a bunch of people here. I had the support. People have really, really supported me in this first, 2 months, 3 months. So I basically took what I was doing, just made a lateral move and ended up, the big thing was also financially. I'm almost 30 and I want to be able to get engaged, buy a house, do these things. And for chiropractors, I feel like in the space, as an associate, you're just an employee there. And the person you're working for is the business. They own it all. They are the face of it. And you're just kind of there to take what's left. And also when I started at this other clinic, I had to build my books. I didn't really get handed many patients because he was also still kind of new. So it was this kind of, we're doing the same thing. We see the same type of patients, all the same work, but my pay compensation was just so much less. So you're like, okay, this opportunity fell in my lap and I was kind of silly to not take it. And it all happened very fast. It was literally like, here's the space. Do you want to do this? Create an entire brand, create an entire business plan, and get it up and rolling within, I think I was under 70 days. I did it all, which was still doesn't feel real to me.
That's it's funny. Those are sometimes the best opportunities though, because it doesn't even give you time to talk yourself out of it. It's kind of like the ultimatum of now or never. And you only get so many of those chances. And for people who are listening, I've had this conversation because I almost like talking more on career development than the actual X's and O's of patient care. And that's part of my role at R2P is just serving as a mentor, early career navigation for people within our company. I'm involved with our sports residency, and it's a natural conversation you have of what's an ideal work environment for you? And for some people, being a staff therapist or a staff chiropractic or an associate, that's ideal and that's what they want and that's fine. But when that's what you want and it doesn't match up with what's actually happening, like you had mentioned, hey, I just want to be an employee, but I'm actually building out my book of business. That's an ownership type role there. And that's something where you don't want to get kind of put into a place where you're doing ownership roles and responsibilities, but being compensated at less than that. So I do think that that's kind of a big take home message for people when they are looking at different jobs, is just making sure that whatever you're getting into actually meets those expectations, and you're not putting in more than what you thought you were going to. And you've got thrown into this kind of quickly. I'm sure you have some lessons and some wake up calls that you've encountered. If you're anything like what we were early on in our years at R2P, and we opened up in 2014. It's kind of trial by fire, and you almost don't know what you don't know until it presents itself. But what have been some of the biggest lessons that you have learned as a business owner? And I got another question after that, but what's been some of the the biggest surprises or things that you've learned along the way?
Well, the biggest thing is like when you're in school, we just got taught none of this. Like I literally now in the second month, I'm learning QuickBooks, learning how to, I'm almost going backwards because I had a patient base that I had took, a part of them followed me. So that first month I was open, I was actually fairly busy for what I thought I would be. So I'm like, oh, the first month I'll learn all the business stuff, the marketing, ordering, all the things I need, making sure I have the inventory, cleaning the space, doing all these things. I didn't really have time for that in the first couple weeks. I was like, okay, just make sure the patient experience is really good. And now I'm going back and like talking to my account and make sure everything's set up right. All the, you know, just even learn how to set up an LLC and everything. No one really teaches you that. It was all like, hey, I'm calling my buddies. Like, if you had to start right now again, like, how did you do all this? But the biggest thing that I think I'm learning is how to balance everything. How do I balance the marketing? How do I balance the social media? How do I balance just make sure the patient care is great? How do I balance making sure all the online stuff for their intake form is done the right way? Cleaning the place, all these little things, you're just starting to realize like you're not just going to work, treating a patient, going home. You have to take care of everything, which I love, but you're trying to find that balance because I initially started having a very wide range of patient hours. I'm like, I'm going to have to start condensing that down because I have to make sure I'm doing all these things on the back end because I'm the one answering the phone. I'm the one sending the emails. I'm the one doing everything. That kind of answer that question?
No, that's perfect. And that's kind of the next thing I wanted to talk a little bit about is the juggling act of wearing several hats and kind of that hybrid role of ownership versus clinician. And that was something early on, you're almost forced to do a little bit of everything. And then as you grow, as you expand, you can begin to delegate, you can bring on staff members. But unfortunately, in the beginning, you have to wear a lot of hats, and you're the marketing people, you're the business development, you're answering phone calls, you're scheduling, you're dealing with reimbursement, whether it's cash pay or insurance. Both have different things from an accounting standpoint. You are the face of the company from a social media standpoint, from a website standpoint. But then, you also have to take care of the patient, and you have to do the actual patient care as well. And I mean, I vividly remember when Josh asked me to come on with him at R2P, we were wearing a lot of those hats, and he had more of a business development role and more responsibilities than myself with that. But I mean, I remember overnight, 2, 3 in the morning, running copay logs and trying to figure out different things from an insurance authorization standpoint. And it's a humbling process. And I think until you actually go through it, you have a hard time of appreciating what future staff members, employees, and colleagues of yours are going to be doing as well. But I like how you had mentioned you pared down your hours. And at some point, you do need to learn how to better chunk and allocate your time. And unfortunately, you may leave a visit here or there on the table where you can accommodate somebody coming in. But at the same time, it's just as detrimental if you are just open for business all the time and then other areas of the business start to take a hit. When did you start to realize that, and what really led to you becoming a little bit more structured and taking ownership of your time and how you were allocating it?
Yeah, so I was at the point where like people would be like, let's say my schedule is from 7 to 3 because I do an early start to like a 7 to 3 one day and then a noon to 7 p.m. the next day. I kind of stagger that so I can get both groups of people, the early and the later people. Then I started realizing I was at the clinic 7 days a week. I'm taking people. Normally I'm done at 3 o'clock on a Monday. I'm taking people at 5:30 because that's the only time they can get in, which I just allowed that. I was working way later on Saturdays. I was even coming on Sundays for people. And it was like, all right, I have to spend time for myself, like again, with my girlfriend, my family. I'm only 2 months into this, so it wasn't a big deal. I'm like, if I keep going down that route, I'm going to lose my own like happiness and just, ways to de-stress outside there where I'm not just constantly thinking about business all the time and realizing that people will make their schedules work for you if you offer them certain times. And then I want to also have the free time to do all my social media, my marketing. Like if I have patients spread throughout the day, it's hard to get deep work done if you only have a 45-minute block. Like you can get some stuff done, but sometimes I want to have that 2-3 hour block. Like, hey, I'm going to knock out these 10 tasks and just have it done. So where I was at before, we took Wednesdays off in the middle of the week to do those things. I think I might get something similar going soon, or at least shortening one day and really trying to condense down and try to just see patients in a quick block and then move on and do the rest of things. Because I have to remember it's got to be sustainable for a long time. At first you take everybody, but I'm realizing financially I'm doing fine. So I can condense that and now make sure I'm just putting all the building blocks together for everything else.
Yeah, and at some point you just stretch yourself too thin. And if you're overcommitting and making yourself available at all times, it's great if you can fit somebody in, but if they're getting you operating at like 60% of your mental bandwidth and your physical ability, then that's like, all right, is quality of care still there? And is this just going to start turning the other direction? And I think the hardest thing in healthcare is most people get into healthcare, whatever the profession may be, and whether it's PT, chiropractic, nursing, whatever, we like to help people. And it's tough because you want to accommodate, you want to bend over backwards to fit people in. But it's kind of funny. Like, I used to feel guilty if I couldn't get somebody in, or if I would ask them to come in outside of what their normal time. So like, hey, they're usually my 2 p.m. Monday, Wednesday person, but oh shoot, I'm already booked up there. And you'd almost be afraid to ask, like, hey, do you think you could come in at noon or 11? And then you do, and they're like, oh, yeah, no problem. I can just switch this. It's like, oh, wow, it is that easy. Like, people do value your time where they will make commitments to do that.
Well, because that's what I always realized. Like, if I have to go see a doctor or anything, I'm like, I will make whatever work. Like, if they say I have 3 o'clock on Thursday, I'm like, yeah, I can do that. I'll make it work, type of deal. You almost forget that people will make their schedules fit for you if they really value it.
Definitely. And I think that's where quality care comes into play. And if people know they have a problem and you have a potential solution for that problem, they will make time for it and they will find the value in that. Now, this, talking about quality of care, let's get into treatment philosophy a little bit. And I alluded to this earlier. One of my good buddies who's a chiro, we treat very, very similar. And that was, admittedly, I think you're like social media, just the algorithms of Instagram put your page in front of me as I was scrolling. And I started going through some stuff. I'm like, oh, that's cool. I like that. I mean, I like how this guy treats. And that's kind of what prompted me to reach out to you. And I look at your facility, I look at the types of stuff that you do, and there's a lot of similarities in regards to philosophy and interventions. Touch a little bit on, you had mentioned, manipulations, hands-on, passive work. There's stuff in the PT field, the chiropractic, we'll just call it the rehab field, where it's kind of that art and science of blending passive and active interventions to get the ideal outcome. How do you approach that in regards to finding that good mix of passive and active interventions?
So that's a great question, because when I was in chiropractic school, and I went to Palmer, which is like, I did not know that it was how true they are in the philosophy, and like, it's just all adjustment based. So I had a bad taste in my mouth in school. It was like, all they want me to do is adjust, which I learned and got great at it. But then when I started practicing, everybody was like, I'm not adjusting everybody. I found like the McKenzie method, FRC. I'm like, I'm going to do so much just exercise based things. I almost swung the other way where I was doing like no passive modalities. And I'm like, people do want that. There's so much importance to manual therapy, whether it's you're not actually changing tissue for the most part, but just the human touch, the emotion, the connection, stuff like that. So now I've been better with utilizing the soft tissue work, the manipulation, following up with exercise. I think manipulation is a strong tool in the right case. Again, if I have someone has a radiculopathy down their right arm, I'm probably not adjusting their neck on day one because of the risk to reward on that. I can manipulate maybe the upper back to help them move better, but follow that up with exercise. And the biggest thing is teaching them the education of why I'm doing things, what I'm doing for them, and having them do at home. So I really try to blend it, because I do get people that want to come in. And I think this is the difference with chiropractic versus PT. I know earlier you said you see a lot of chiropractors go out on their own because people view chiropractic care as more of a maintenance-based thing versus, I think people see PT as like, I had this injury, I go to a bout of PT for 6 to 8 weeks, or I get, referred by my doctor. People come in for all sorts of reasons. Most of them want to just get cracked and go home. But you're like, okay, we can kind of still meet you there and do those things, but teach you the importance, give you the stuff to make you feel better. Again, I get a lot of people want to come in every single month, and I'm never going to turn business away, but making sure they know that I'm not the one that's solely reliant on how their outcomes are. Like, they can do things for themselves. So I'll do the soft tissue. I haven't done any dry needling or scraping or stuff yet. I didn't really get into a lot of that, but it's more so I got the massage gun, I got the voodoo floss, I've got my own manual therapy, and then manipulation as well. But I try to really blend that, so not every single person is just getting an adjustment all the time.
Yeah, and I think something that, and speaking personally, I was one of the first PTs in our general geographic area to go through dry needling training. So when I got dry needling certified, I was one of the few people in the area that was doing it. From a PT standpoint, there were other professions that were doing it in our area, but from a physical therapy and being able to get that in a physical therapy office, there was myself and another guy in town at a different facility, and we were kind of it. So early in my career, I had a lot of people that were coming in for that as an adjunct to service. And the nice part about it, I got a lot of reps. So I got a lot of just sample size of people who were appropriate for it, people who were inappropriate for it. How does it serve as an adjunct? But whether it's needling, whether it's soft tissue work, whether it's manipulation, the one thing that I have found to be extremely beneficial about that is it gives you almost undivided time and attention with your patient where you can dual task, have conversations, frame up expectations, it provides a chance to give like a 5 to 10 minute educational window where you can kind of explain to them what their current status is, what you're hoping to accomplish that day. You can check in on their home program. So it's funny. I think oftentimes we get this kind of idea that like when you're doing soft tissue work or needling or manipulations, like there's no other interaction taking place when you're most likely probably taking them through some degree of range of motion. You're probably educating them on something that, hey, if I'm going to talk to you, instead of just sitting in the waiting room and sitting next to you in a chair for 5 minutes to talk about how your home program's going or what your status is, let's get you back on a table and I can get my hands on you and start reassessing things that used to be painful or used to be limited. We can still have that conversation, but we're knocking out a couple things at once. So I think within our company, within the field, I probably tend to do a little bit more hands-on work than some others, but I hopefully find meaningful ways to integrate other educational interventions or just other more active interventions with that as well. And I think that oftentimes is an underutilized skill that we readily have. And then obviously the perception of a patient and you being with them and having your hands on them as you're taking them through different ideas. I can't tell you how many times somebody has shown up for PT and they say, hey, I went to whatever prior to this for this condition. They told me this was wrong or they said I needed to do this. They never even touched me. And, whether or not they needed to or didn't need to, there's still that perception of what was a valuable or what was not a valuable experience in the past. And I think, kind of meeting them halfway and figuring out how you can meet expectations and get your goals done clinically goes a long way with a patient.
And I think that's something I've really started to realize and learn is like, I have to make sure I'm doing what they expect in a sense and what they like. Like people want the manipulation of the soft tissue work. I can't just completely throw that out and they're like, well, I'm going to go somewhere else then. Even though we're getting great outcomes, there's, the expectations from them. And that's why I'm glad you said that. I do use the soft tissue stuff. It's like that 5-10 minute window where I can talk to them, whether it's even just about their day, their life, like we connect. And I think, and that's going back to kind of the reason I did leave my previous clinic was because our appointment times went from 30 minutes to 15. And we were starting to get more of like that quick, come on in. I don't really want to hear about your day. How's your pain? Blah, blah, blah. Crack, quick exercise, out the door. Like I want to have more time and really get to know my patients. And that's the model that I really try to adopt is, time. And people really do appreciate that. I get people that love coming in because we talk, they feel better, we do some stuff, and I send them home. Like I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I'm still providing value.
Yeah, and I think it's funny. I can't tell you how many people, whether it's getting them on a table or just getting the session started, where I'll greet them in the waiting room. We start talking. I'm like, you know what? Let's head back to the turf. Let's walk and talk and stretch and talk while we're doing this. And I often find a lot of those conversations. They end up happening during times on a table where you're doing some hands-on work or you're going through a dynamic warm-up or you're going through a necessary intervention, so maybe like a stretch or a mobility drill, but it's one that they're familiar with, and they can kind of knock that out as they update you on how they're feeling. So it's funny. Then you get into like the business side and the logistics of a day. Like if you don't keep the day moving, then you're just going to be playing catch up as well. Yes. Kyle, for those who are interested in pursuing a career in chiropractic or starting their own business, do you have any words of wisdom for them or just thoughts that you would like to pass along for them to consider?
I think the biggest thing, and this is maybe more specific to the chiropractic realm, is I would encourage more students who are really thinking about opening their own practice, like doing so. But finding someone who's been there and done that, reach out to them and almost have them as a mentor, because I don't want to say it's extremely hard. There's things that they're definitely difficult and you learn as you go, but I think people get scared into it and they go, hey, you're going to be an associate. They do this for years. And the amount of people I've had reach out to me recently that are very unhappy with their current associate position because it's not what they expected. It's a lot. I'm seeing it so much in the chiropractic field. So I would really recommend that if you are thinking about that, whether it's even your first or second year, start planting that seed and learning this stuff, because school will not teach you that. Unfortunately, everyone I've talked to has been in multiple different chiropractic schools. They don't teach you that. Also, if people who are interested in chiropractic, highly recommend finding those clubs and finding those modalities as soon as you can and start learning that stuff. I hate to admit, but most of my time was spent in the library, not going to my philosophy class, but instead learning McKenzie method, FRC, DNS, all these other things, MoPal, whatever you name it. That's where I spent all my time and energy. And then talking to people who are in the field that I respect, and like, people are always willing to give you advice. I get students reaching out to me left and right now, and I am more than willing to hop on a call and talk to them, because I remember being in their shoes, not really knowing. You're just kind of put through this funnel in chiropractic school. You're going to adjust everybody. You're going to learn these 10 different adjustment techniques, and there you go. So that's for the chiropractic stuff. The business stuff, I really tell people, like, I would say take the chance. It's going to be slow. It's going to be hard at first to, see this big success, but I think it is so much more worth it, especially in our field. I'm also a cash-based chiro. So cash-based practice is a little different. You have a little more leeway. You don't have to deal with all the insurance stuff. So you do buy yourself some time there and can financially get ahead a little sooner. But that's, I guess it's a different model, because you guys are mostly insurance-based, correct?
Yes, we're primarily insurance-based. We have a cash option for those who, for whatever circumstance, don't fit into one of the insurances, but we're in network with most major providers in our area.
Yeah, I went cash because that's where I was at, and unfortunately, insurance is getting worse and worse with chiropractic care because they see it as strictly wellness, and then if you don't adjust them, and they definitely put you in a little box. And for some people who want to adjust everybody, they can do phenomenal. I'm just that oddball that doesn't really use it all the time. So the cash-based model has been a lot more lenient, and then it's given me a little more freedom to kind of have more time, because I'm not sitting there going crazy on notes because I have to send to an insurance company, make sure they're still good, everything I need to know. But that does buy me some time, which is nice.
No, definitely. And that's the, we've had this conversation with a variety of different people in a variety of different fields. And, cash, insurance, small clinic, big clinic, single location, multiple location, there's not really a right or wrong or good or bad approach. It's just being mindful of what are the advantages and the limitations that each offers, and which one coincides most with what the type of business that you're trying to run. And I think that's the biggest thing for people who are interested in going into their own practice, is figure out what do you envision yourself wanting to do, and then figuring out the model that is going to be kind of the least friction going that route. So, Kyle, I appreciate you taking the time to hop on here. For those that want to follow along into the journey of your career and watch your company grow and succeed, how do they follow along, and what's the easiest way somebody can get in touch with you if they want to connect?
So where I'm at the most is on Instagram, drkyle.richmond. That is my main account. It's gotten crazy with the amount of followers and interactions I've had on there. I encourage anybody that's interested, please reach out. I respond to everybody personally. I'll take time to get on calls, because I remember how scary it was being in their shoes. So most of my stuff's on Instagram. I do have my clinic account, Rebuilt Strength and Rehab. I'm doing some stuff on there, not a ton. We'll slowly start pushing that. But I'd say Instagram is the best place to find me. I still put some stuff on TikTok, YouTube, website's currently in development, but anyone who wants to reach out, send me a DM on Instagram and I will absolutely get back to you.
Awesome. Well, Kyle, I appreciate you taking the time, and best wishes as you continue your journey.
I appreciate that. Thank you for having me.
All right. Take care.
Thank you for listening to the Strength and Knowledge Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode or have been tuned in for multiple episodes, we would love for you to subscribe, rate, and give us a review on Apple Podcast or Spotify. Until next time, thanks for listening.